Welcome to Spacious Creative. I am Cindy Ingram.
And I am Heather Doyle Fraser. And in this podcast, we're exploring the process and practice of creativity, but with the foundation in compassion.
In this limited series, we'll dive into how creative expression shows up in our lives, from childhood inspirations to the challenges of perfectionism and everything in between.
Whether you're reconnecting with your inner child or reimagining your creative identity and how you can harness more creativity in your life, Spacious Creative is here to inspire and support your journey.
Hello, Heather.
Hey, Cindy.
We're back
for another episode of Spacious Creative.
Yes. And today we wanted to talk about what do you do when you don't feel like doing anything, which I think is a perfect topic for me at the moment, because life is really, there's a lot going on in my life. You know, I've got my husband got laid off and the school is starting and my father-in-law's in the hospital. And, there's all these things piling up. And intellectually, I know if I were to go and work on some art, it would probably make me feel better. But I can't really get myself to actually do that when I'm used to doing it every single day. And I know that stops a lot of people. They'll get sick, or they'll, something will happen in their life and they'll just fall off and then have a really hard time picking back up with their momentum and their creativity.
I think this is a really common thing that I see with people I work with and with myself. And I think one of the first things to remember is that first, when we are, sick, when we are, have a lot of things going on, the first thing to do is to recognize those things, allow for those things and realize, okay, my baseline is not the same as it usually is.
Yeah.
And, we've talked a lot about how we can use our nervous system in concert with creativity, like bringing your nervous system, back to a soothing place, regulating your nervous system and coming into creativity to help you create because you feel safe enough to create. But creativity can also be one of the things that brings soothing to you. And just like you said, intellectually, I know this, but it's hard to get back into that habit or pattern that you normally do. I think for me, sometimes when I fall out of a practice that I know is helpful to me, I try to jump back in at the same place that I was when I pulled. And that's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Because, I've been doing this for a long time. So of course my practice is going to be longer. It's going to be more, not intense, but it's going to be more involved. And then when you are not doing that practice for a few weeks or maybe a month or longer, you can't start back at that place where you were. It's like anything that you do, let's say, relating it to walking or something, like if you've been walking 3 miles a day and then you get sick and you aren't doing that for a month, you can't come back the first day and do 3 miles. You have to start at a mile or a half a mile or a quarter of a mile, wherever you are, depending on where your baseline of health and wellness is. And I think it's the same when we're talking about creative endeavors. It can help you to access some of that soothing and inspiration. And you also have to start slow. So that can be really frustrating. And I know in my mind sometimes, well, if I can't do it, full out, then why am I doing it?
Why do it at all?
Why do it at all? Is it really going to help that much? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Even if you only do 5 minutes of something, it's going to help. And I think that's hard to remember because we're already feeling down. We're already feeling depleted, we're already feeling compromised in some way. And so it's easy to just brush that aside and just say, I'm not going to do it at all. When in reality, if we would just do like the barest, smallest amount, it would help to elevate that baseline just a little bit more.
Yeah, like but before I kind of started this little spell I'm in, I was making first I was like making a painting every day, and then I was making a collage every day. I was like I was just churning them out, and I was like spending lots of time. I wasn't watching any TV. I wasn't, I was like just in here making art all the time. And then, got hit by a bunch of then went on a trip that made me tired. And then my husband got let off while I was on the trip, and I came back and like nothing. And so last week I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to do it. I was like, I can't
Oh, that's
imagine going over
inspiring.
there. I know. I was like, I'm just gonna have to go over there. And I was like, I'm gonna sit down and I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna make a collage. So I sit down. I cleaned my desk because it was messed because I'd been just putting things there. And then I just sat there and I was like, I can't do it. I was like, I can't do it. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to lower. I was like, I'll just lower my standards here. I'm not going to make a work of art right now. I'm just going to do something. And so my go-to is gluing scraps down to paper. I have a drawer of all my scraps and started doing that. And it was great. I was just gluing scraps down. And then I had an idea to take all of those pages and make all my scrap pages into a book. And so I started making that. And like before I know it, I have a whole little book I've made over a few days. And I was like, oh, I just had to like lower my, I
It's not
still am
really
not like
lowering,
at
yeah,
all.
it's not really lowering standards as much as allowing for your humanity.
Yes, true.
I think. I mean, like, I think
Yeah.
that's, I mean, like, whenever, whenever growing up, whenever someone would say, all you need to do is try your best. And for
Yeah.
someone who is really good at things, oh my gosh, that's a high standard.
Yeah.
My best. God, that my best is really good. But what I think that, as a recovering perfectionist, I will say that I have come to recognize like my best from day to day is different because
Yeah.
I have different resources available to me.
True.
And so I don't usually say that to myself because it does bring up all of those thoughts. But knowing like I have what I have today, like
Yeah.
resource, and what is the smallest thing that I can do with those resources right now?
Yeah.
And that's going to help. It's not going to hinder at all. It's going to help.
Yeah. That is that is hard to like I know it because
Mhm.
I've always done my best at
Mhm.
everything I do. And then if I can't do my best, I don't do it. And art has been teaching me that lesson, but obviously still haven't learned it because I'm like, oh, yeah, but
It's
it's
a
just true.
it's a hard one to learn. It's a
Yeah.
lifetime of unlearning.
Yeah. Because like some days my best is like, hey, I got up and I fed myself and I survived the day.
Well, and sometimes a creative act on one of those days might just be sitting with your cup of coffee or tea or water and looking out a window and thinking about art or thinking about something that you want to do. It's not even doing anything. It's just like being and doing some pre-work in your head. I say pre-work, but I mean like pre-creative act in your
Yeah.
sometimes that's the bare minimum.
Yeah. What about a person who that I see on the other side is like, which is I guess not related to this topic, but that the people that get stuck in that place of prep, like when I first started to make art, I spent 8 months preparing.
Right.
Had to get
What
my
was the thing
supplies.
that what was the thing that pulled you out of the preparation mode?
You're not gonna like the answer. I forced myself to do it. I forced it. No, I built accountability.
Okay. So I don't necessarily hate that answer. I mean, the I might choose a different word
Than
besides
force.
forced,
Wait, it
but
wasn't 8 months, it was 10 months.
okay. So, but I think that we all have those places of like that fierce compassion of I have prepared enough and I still don't feel ready. I don't feel ready. And this compassionate, fierce self of mine is going to say, just do something today.
Yeah.
There is like, that's the piece of compassion that people misunderstand. It's not just real, it's not just soft. It is this fierce underlying, I'm going to help alleviate this by like pushing you a little bit too. So
Yeah.
these things go hand in hand. They're not like totally separate. And I think that when you get to the point of, I can't not do this anymore. I can't just sit here and keep preparing. I will never be ready. And maybe that's what the making peace part of it is. Like, I don't think I'll ever be ready. And okay, I'm going to start anyway.
Yeah. I like that. And you know what it makes me think of is when we did our workshop and you talked about the three systems of your nervous system, the threat, the drive, and the soothe. And
Mhm.
like if I look back at that time when I was doing all that preparation, like it was, I guess what was missing was the drive. Like well, maybe I don't know, maybe no. But like it's the drive that got me to do it. To like
Yeah, the drive got you to do it. And the preparation itself was a little bit soothing,
yeah.
right? Because it was telling you like, okay, if I do this, then it'll be safe enough. Then I'll be safe enough to do that, to make another step. And you and we get comfortable in that place for a while. And at a certain point, then it's not enough. And the drive kicks in a little bit more because you've got enough soothing there. And I don't mean like so much that you feel completely comfortable, but enough that you're like, okay, I have 10 months of preparation. I can take a step on this. And the drive like pushes you through that little doorway and
And the
over.
threat in that moment is like saying, it's like that badgering, you should be doing this voice. Why aren't you doing it? You
Mhm.
know, the one that's like making me feel guilty for not doing it.
Right.
Um, so I
And so
just now saw how
there's
they
a
all
little
three
bit
work
of help
together.
from threat there too. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why we talk about like you don't want to eliminate threat. You don't want it to completely go away. It does serve a purpose. It does help. It's not a motivator necessarily. The drive and that soothe are more motivating than threat. It's hard to create when you're in total threat, but having some interplay, that's why that, when I drew that diagram of the threat, drive, and soothe, the three emotional regulation systems, there's an overlapping place in the middle where you have threat and drive and soothe happening. And that's where your creative like zone is.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm going to analyze. I'm like using myself as an example here because I'm like, I am living this. I'm like, what am I doing now? If I'm not doing it, threat system's definitely activated.
Right.
Probably it's
Right.
overactivated. And then my soothing practice right now is playing my favorite video game.
Mhm.
And I have been playing that a lot. I was gonna say too much, but then I didn't want to judge myself by saying it. And I've just been playing that video game a lot. So I get yeah. And
And
I
that
but
that sort of was replacing you just said a few minutes
yeah,
ago. I was doing so much art, I wasn't watching any TV or doing anything
yeah, I
else.
wasn't doing anything else.
So that replaced some of your art.
Yeah, yeah, it did.
Or
So
maybe
the question
it,
that I
it-
started out with, which was, what do you do when you don't want to do anything
Mhm.
is like basically what do you do when your drive is not there.
Yeah.
So like how do you get that
I
drive
think
to
when we're
activate?
talking about creativity, you're like enticing it, you're nurturing it by like doing the smallest amount. And when you start to do the smallest amount, just like you said, oh, I just glued down scraps of paper, then your drive took over after a
Yeah.
little bit. Not immediately, but like it took over when it saw what was happening. Like, this is brilliant. Hey, let's make a buck. That was your drive.
Yeah.
But like that didn't happen immediately. But once you had enough, like that soothing system's coming in, it's helping you because you're soothed by, like at least this is how I am. And it sounds like that's how you are too. Like I'm soothed by creative practice. And once I have enough creative practice, not enough, but like once I'm in that process more, that ignites my drive system because I'm inspired, because it's, fun, because all of a sudden I see all these possibilities where I saw zero the day before.
Yeah.
Uh, so they're all working in concert together.
Yeah. So it's figuring out the one small thing you could do. It's like those people who say just like if you want to take a walk, like put your socks
But I should,
on.
right. Yes. Put the socks on.
Yeah.
Um, that's why I said like look out the window with thinking about what you would like to create or reading a
Yeah.
book, looking at art or something like that. And just have your notebook next to you in case you want to put something on paper or whatever that is.
Stream
I
of
think,
consciousness, like bullet point writing or something, it's just like writing just words that pop in your head if you're wanting to like write more. Um, I did that this morning and that really helped. I was just like, I'm just going to write some bullet points.
I
And
also
then once I wrote more, I was like, the more started to flow.
and suspending your disbelief. I think that is one of the things you can also practice in terms of like, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think this is going to help. I don't think this is, what if we just suspended that disbelief for 5 minutes, 10 minutes? For the next 10 minutes, I'm suspending that disbelief.
Yeah.
Set a timer. I can disbelieve this all I want after this 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's so funny every time I think about this process, I always can so easily compare it to like exercise or like going on walks because it is literally the exact same thing. And I think there's there's so many people that um that can't it may okay sorry it's like not being able to see how the small little practices accumulate into bigger results. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go. People will be like, I'm gonna do couch to 5K, and then in however many weeks I'm gonna be running a 5K, and then they realize they get into week 3 or whatever, and they're like, okay, this I can't do this anymore. So then they just don't do it at all. But it's like, well, what if you did couch to 5K over the entire course of the year? Then
Right.
you could eventually get to that place. You just have to like slow it way down, and it's like this productivity churning thing that like our society is in is like, okay, it's not worth it if you can't
Produce.
produce
Yeah.
something wonderful at the end
And
right away.
pretty soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, especially in creativity, there's like time is a landscape that you're operating in, and you have to befriend that. Like,
Yeah.
and realize that like any relationship, you need to nurture that. And how do you do that? By building trust, going slow, like all of those things. And just recognizing like if this relationship, I can't step into doing an hour of something or however, whatever it looks like for you right now. I have to start slow. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah, that was just a lesson I got a lot from you at the kind of beginning of our work together, and something I learned a lot in your compassionate writer course too, and where like if you're not consistently engaging in your writing or your art making or whatever it is, like you fall out of relationship with it. And so every time you come back in, it's like you kind of have to you have to start rebuilding that relationship.
Yep.
And then but when you're consistent with it, like you're you're nurturing it and allowing it to, I don't know, thrive. I don't know.
Flourish, whatever. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and it does, and consistent looks different for different people too. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you have to do, you know, you don't have to do it every single day, but you need to do it enough that you are comfortable with it, So maybe that's 3 times a week, maybe it's 4 times a
Yeah.
week, it's five. It depends on who you are, but these little touch points with your art do create momentum, and they create trust, and they create yearning, and they create all of these feelings, I think, inside of us that we don't, once we experience that, we don't want to let them go. But we all do let them go at certain
Yeah.
points because life happens.
Yeah.
And
You're going to
that's
get
okay
sick
too.
and you're going to,
Yes. That's okay
yeah.
too. That's your humanity. That's where the compassion piece comes in. Of course, I'm not doing that right now. I can't even lift my head off the pillow, you know, but what, like when I'm feeling better, I can restart. I can come back to this relationship. I can
Mhm.
rebuild it.
Yeah. And I think I read a quote recently. I'm turning that book I made for my scraps. I'm going to put creativity quotes in it. So I've been collecting creativity quotes. And I got one and it says, the object isn't to make art, it's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable. And I like that too, that it's like, yeah, it's not your goal when you sit down to end up with a product. It's that your goal is just to be in that
Engage.
place.
Yeah. Engage with it. Yeah.
And that makes me think of what you call it, a landscape. I really love that. Like that visual of like you're in the landscape of your creativity, and it's just like an exploration and it's a discovery and it's
Curiosity. Well, you talked
yeah.
about that, a couple times. Like if you can be just the smallest bit curious, that will help immensely.
As you say that, it really makes me think that the curiosity about your creative endeavors and your curiosity about your like inner self are the same thing. So like
Yeah.
this landscape of creativity is really a landscape of yourself, and what creativity is an exploration of yourself.
Yes. I mean, I talk about this specifically with writing all the time. Like the writing process is the life process.
Yeah.
It is a direct mirror. It's a direct mirror. And I mean, you can just substitute the word creativity because writing is
Yeah.
creativity. So like that's the same thing. It's the
Yeah.
same journey. It's the same process.
I don't know. I never thought about it exactly like that before, even though I lived it, and we talked about it like a life, and my writing process of this book is like this. It's the same as my life, and I learned a lot of life lessons by my. Somehow I'm this. Yeah, I'm just kind of seeing it in a different light, and I'm trying now. I'm a different way, and I'm trying to like wrap words around it, but I can't quite do it. But it's fascinating. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Now I'm lost in thought. I don't have words. Mm.
But I mean, that's what happens when you are enticed by your creativity. You feel sometimes like you're like lost in that awe of it, in the,
Yeah.
and that can be inspiring too. And I think we try to like put a name and a label on things to help make sense of them. Obviously, that's what we do as humans. That's why we
Yeah.
have language.
We make
But
meaning. That's what we do.
right,
Yeah.
but sometimes you don't need to. You just need to be in it.
Yeah. And then, I mean, that is one of the greatest things to me about the writing process and the art making is it is the closest I can get to just being in my
Mhm.
life. Like, in any other thing I'm doing, like video games, I'm at my mind is active and stuff. And sometimes I do work on my creative work while I do it. Like I do that intentionally because I'm like, I need my this part of my brain to be doing something so that the other part of my brain can focus on that. But a lot of the times it's just dissociation. I'm just like, I just want to like forget for a while. So that's not really just being. That's
Mhm.
escapism. Any other time my brain is just going a mile a minute, like it's worrying about the future or the past or what's going on or, dwelling on problems. But when I'm writing or when I'm being creative or when I'm making art or, whatever it is, like I find that I'm more present and I'm more open and aware of my environment and like what is happening right now and that I'm okay and safe right now and that it's like I'm not dwelling on whatever I'm making is going to be terrible. Well, sometimes that happens. I have like a freak out moment where I'm like, I'm gonna hate this. I'm
Yes.
terrible. And,
Yeah.
but most of the time it's just like I'm enjoying the process and like allowing it to happen. And
And
it's a
that's
beautiful
like,
space.
yeah, that's like what I was saying, how I feel like for me, it's the creative process is like, does create safeness for me. It didn't always, like when I first, kind of started coming back to my creative processes or practices, there was a lot of anxiety connected to that. But then once I allowed myself to do more with it, to be more with it, to build that relationship, it became a safe space to go to even. And so it's this kind of symbiotic flow of, helping to regulate you and you needing to be regulated to do it, but it's like happening back and forth, and it's
Yeah.
really, I love it so much.
Yeah. And that does, yeah, you're right. Like that is what it is for me now. But when I started, it was not that.
No. Well, it couldn't be. Like
The
it can't be.
vulnerability of
Right.
it,
Yeah.
yeah.
The only
This-
time it was that, I think probably for both of us, was when we were little, little, little. Like
yeah.
we didn't know that people created things to like produce something.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't have, you were just delighting in the process until, nuns told you were.
Yeah. Episode, I don't remember. One,
I think episode 1
yeah.
probably told you that they're the reason why they don't want to be a teacher or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, you drew too many butterflies and flowers.
Oh, yeah. But it's really scary at the beginning because you're just like, it's taking your inner, it's taking your inner world and your exploration of your inner world and it's putting it out of you and leaving it up for judgment.
Yeah.
Even if you don't share it to other people, like your own judgment is bad enough.
And and that's why even when you're starting in those small, small increments, like do if if you're thinking about starting something, you start with something that is like the the least threatening thing you could possibly do. I'm gonna draw a spiral.
Yeah.
Like something I do all the time when I doodle. Or I'm gonna write a word and outline it because I love doing that. That's a fun thing for me to do. Or and use colors that I love. you pick when you haven't been with something for a while, you pick the easiest route in. You don't pick the hardest route in. I'm going to try a new type of painting. How about watercoloring? I've never done it before. Let's do it. No, don't do that.
Wait, you're calling me out. I've done that a lot of times in my life. It doesn't work. She's right. Listen to her.
And but then once you feel comfortable, try the new thing. Yes,
Yeah.
awesome. But like that's about that, the bringing that safe, what you already know is safe, go to what you already know is safe. And if nothing feels safe, then help your body to feel safe, because if your body feels safe, then that sends a message to the rest, to you, like, oh, I can do a little bit of something. So if that means sit on the most comfy place, you like the comfiest chair you have, or the couch, or your favorite blanket, or have a cup of tea, or like anything that makes your body physically feel safe, start there too. Like that, I mean, it sounds simple, and it is simple, but it you don't, if you're hot, if you're cold, if you're sweating, if you're this, if you're that,
Yeah.
that's not going to be the ideal place to start.
As you were saying that, and I'm remembering back when I started to make art, and there was the 10-month period I was preparing. I was doing little things like that during, so maybe I started sooner than I thought.
Yeah.
Like you and I both went to an event that year, and um, there was a woman who presented who doodles,
Yeah.
Diane Black, and
Mhm.
we did this little doodling thing, and it's like that night I went into my hotel room and I just doodled, and I and drew little things, and it was really exciting. And then so when I got home, I was like, I'm just gonna go and get all of Diane Black's products. She has all these like online courses and things about or with her doodles, and I just copied all of her doodles. Like every single doodle of hers that was on that site, I drew it and I colored it. And I was in my very first art journal page, which is that's when I officially think is like my beginning, is I did look at those doodles and draw some of her flowers and put them on a background. So it was just like I took that early stuff and then I just took it just a step further, took those flowers and made a little background for them. And yeah, so I guess I did do a little bit more than I thought that I did. There was just little bits of experimentation, but that since that was copying, I thought that it didn't count.
So there's that judgment piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't count when I was copying, but it was leading me up to the confidence and the safeness to be able to try something on my own. Um,
Well, and that's sort of talking about, that's related to what we talked about on our last episode, which was like not starting from scratch on something, like
yeah,
starting with something else and making it your own,
yeah,
or starting with a previous thing you already did and iterate on that in some way. But that's basically what you were doing there, is like, okay, I don't want to come up with an idea on my own right now because that feels a little bit too overwhelming. So what if I looked at somebody else's stuff and I tried to do that?
yeah. Yeah, and I think about that's how people learn how to play musical instruments. They learn the
That's
chords
how
and then they
people learn how to do everything pretty
do
much.
everything. Yeah, yeah. But no, but not me. I go in and I'm like genius right out of the gate without doing the early work.
I see you.
I remember
Yeah.
I was in like probably like a state where I couldn't even run at all. Like, no zero running could be done by my body. And I remember I read a whole book about running. And I was just like, and I look back at my Goodreads and I'm like, why did I read a whole book about running when I could not even like probably walk for more than 10 minutes at that point in my life. And I'm like, that's how I do things. I just want to like take the fast lane to
Mhm.
be exceptional. But that goes
And
back to what we were talking about last week too, is like there is no good or bad or whatever. It's just you're just in it. So
I mean, like with something like math, this is the right answer, this is the wrong answer.
yeah,
But with something like art, it's not as objective as that.
yeah. I always use that as an example when I'm working with teachers. Like, you know, you don't go to a math teacher and then like hand them this like really complicated problem and be like, what's the answer to this? And then just be able to say the answer. Like, no, they have to go through all the steps. You have to do all the math and you have to show your work and you have to go through each one. And like learning stuff about art is the same thing. There are steps and there's no right answer at the end. Well, there's I guess a right answer for you.
There's a,
Um,
yes, that's what it is, I think.
yeah. But that there are, there are the steps you have to take to get there. Copying Diane Dleck's doodles was one I
Mhm.
did. Hmm. I like that. Okay, so little tiny moments of things, whether you're just starting a creative practice and you haven't, it's been a long time, or you've fallen out and you are working to get back in,
Mhm.
start with little moments of curiosity and kind of baby step your way back in.
The smallest moments you can find, and also creating like a little safe cocoon around yourself while you're doing it in some way, physically,
Yeah.
emotionally.
Put on your favorite music.
Mhm. Or don't, if that's not something that makes
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's true.
I personally am, pro music, but when I'm writing something, I might have some classical music in the background, but if someone turned on some music with lyrics while I was trying to write, that would bring on my threat system pretty fast.
Yeah.
So even just knowing like what are the things that help me in these situations? And if you think they're going to help you, and then while you're doing it, it doesn't, stop. Don't don't keep going. I will make this work. No, no. Say,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's one thing that you taught in you teach in your compassionate writer program is like making a list of the things are that bring on your soothe system and that bring on your that's what we did in that work, what you did in our workshop too.
Yeah.
And that's helpful. My
Because I
daughter
don't.
can read and listen to songs with lyrics and read at the same time. Blows my mind that she does that. That's just a side note. I'm like, how can you get your brain to do that? But everybody's different.
Yeah, and it could be certain songs, or like
That's
not
true.
all songs. Um,
That's true.
if it's something you've heard over and over and over and over and over that just becomes kind of like background noise to you, that can
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. That's probably what she's doing. Well, I know that's what she's doing because she only listens to like two albums. So
Mhm.
it'll be one of the two,
Mhm.
most likely. Well, I think that will help a lot of people. It seems so simple, but it it's it is, but it's also like not obvious, and it's also when you're in those places of like no motivation or in a slump, like it's not necessarily something you think, because usually in those moments I'm like catastrophizing things and
I also notice that I personally have a bias for hard. So
yeah.
um, the simple thing isn't usually my first go-to. It is now for this just because I've practiced it so much, but in general, I think, you know, the simplest place or the easiest place is not my like let's start there place usually
Yeah.
because I have, if it's hard, then it's worth more.
It's worth it. Yeah, then it's the
But
right thing.
in this instance, the hard way isn't the like best way in. The
Yeah.
simplest, the easiest way is the best way in
And
when you're.
that's one of those moments of life, the creative process teaching you lessons about your life, like
Mhm.
you could transfer that hard way thing to be like in other parts of your life, like, oh, you maybe don't have to do the hard way.
Mhm. Yeah.
One thing at a time, I guess.
One thing at a time.
I think I will after this pick up my children from school because it's their first day of school, and then I will come back and I will do something very small instead of playing Factorio, my video game.
I also will do something small. Today has been a back-to-back kind of day for me. And so I haven't really done anything for me yet today creatively. So I think I will do the same.
Yeah, we've inspired ourselves. So hopefully we've inspired the people listening. Tell us about it, people. Send us an email back and tell us if you did something small after you listened to this. Yeah. Anything else on this topic you can think of that we anything we
I'm
missed?
sure if I stretched, I would definitely find something else, but we can leave it
Yeah,
here.
I think that's a good spot. And if you are in this place of feeling, I saw this on a reel yesterday, no motivation is, or like, you're in that place where you're having a hard time starting. We have a really amazing solution for you, which is our upcoming program, the Spacious Creative Compassionate Process and Practice, where we will be taking these things we've been talking about and putting them into action and in a compassionate way.
In a safe place too.
Yes. With other people who are also doing the same thing as you. So you have a community supporting you as well. And you can join us. We start September 4th. And the link to join is thespaciouscreative.com, which will also be in the show notes. But it's going to be a really wonderful special program that we would love for you to be a part of.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, that's all for today. And we'll be back next week. More creativity talk. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Spacious Creative. We hope you found inspiration and insights to give you some momentum on your creative journey.
If you're ready to dive deeper, we invite you to register for our 6-week program, The Spacious Creative, Compassionate Practice and Process, starting in September. Sign up at thespaciouscreative.com. We can't wait to connect with you again on our next episode. Until then, trust your creativity and hold your inspiration and yourself with compassion.